In this chapter, we will work on modeling. Now we will model an orange, a melon, and a bottle. To save time, you are watching this modeling recording 3 times faster because it takes a long time. We are modeling the bottle with simple and an ordinary method. First, I'm drawing a spline object which will create the body of the bottle. Then, by tweaking the curves and working on the corners, I'm trying to obtain the bottle form which I desired. This object will have a refractive material, so the body will be a thick object. I mean, not a single polygon plane object. I'm planning to model a 4 mm thick glass bottle here. In this model, there mustn't be sharp corners on the surfaces because it is made from hot glass. There won't be these kinds of sharp corners. So while tweaking the curves, I'm changing all straight lines to curves in desired radius. At this point, we must be sensitive and calm because this process can take time. For creating more photorealistic models, we must be careful about the small details in general, because generally these kinds of small details can disturb the realism of the stage if they are not well solved. The model is only a small part of photorealism. The other parts are texture and lighting. We must pay attention to the details of the objects as we pay attention to general view of the object. Especially appearance of this kind of corners includes clues about the material of the object and how they manufactured. Now the object is in 3D, but I have to correct some small details because I don't like the overall look. If I need, I can go back to the spline level and tweak the curves there. Now the bottom part of the bottle seems thick, but I want it to be slimmer, and top part must be wider. Let's take the shoulders lower, and the down part of the bottle must be slimmer. Yes, I'm close to finish. Now I completed the model of our bottle. Next step is to model the closed container model. Previous model was the high polygon scene model, and I will use it for final rendering. Now I'm modeling the closed container. This model has no holes. It will be filled by glue particles, and later I will use this model for collision calculations. Before rendering the final stage, I will hide this collision model and use the high polygon scene model. I'm modeling this in a lower polygon count. As I said before, this is a totally closed container. We will put this in the melon and fill it with particles. Well, let's rename this object as glass bottle proxy. These two models will be used for different things, but collision model have to be placed inside the scene model. They must be on the same object center, and the outer part of the low poly model must be fit with the inner part of the scene model. I have to fix little differences in the details. These Actually, orange is a polar object, so I can start with a sphere. I mean, an orange has two poles like the Earth. This fruit has an elliptic form, so I will create it with the freeform deform modifier. To create a wavy form on the ends, on the poles of the orange, I will prefer using a displacement map. So now I'm moving to Photoshop and start creating a map for displacement. Here I have a white background and I'm drawing black triangles on the surface. These black areas will create lower areas. They are triangles, but they are not identical. Some of them are larger, some of them are smaller, thicker or longer. Now let's use a Gaussian blur because they cannot have those sharp corners. Now I'm using the displacement modifier in Max. I will choose a spherical mapping and let's increase the strength value. Actually it's a good start, but I see a problem on the pole of the sphere. I will create a hole there. I will give details to that part later. Let's go back to Photoshop and let's make these triangles thicker. As you see, orange starts to get its form. I'm again on max now. I decided to set strength value to 7. For the opposite pole of the orange, I use the same technique as before and blend the area on the opposite pole of the orange. To fix the deformation of the polygons at the end, I'm making a hole there. This will be so small so nobody will see it actually. To get rid of the symmetric form of the orange, I will again return back to freeform deform modifier, creating an asymmetric form for the orange. And let's render it. Of course, orange has a bumpy surface, and for obtaining it, I will prepare a bump map. Now I will use the standard noise to create bump map. I will change this to a bump map that I will create in Photoshop, but as a start, this is enough. I can start with red-orange color for the diffuse color of the orange, And yes, as I said before, I will create a bump and diffuse map for the orange in Photoshop. So these are just for test. Well, now I'm in Photoshop and I will create the texture. I will start with a red orange color. This orange color close to red, and I want to use a lighter orange color for the middle parts of it. This means orange won't be in the same value everywhere. I mean the orange color. I'm creating a new layer under the current layer and fill it with orange color close to yellow. And I'm erasing the middle part of the red orange layer to see the yellow orange color. All of these are for a rich appearance on the orange surface, but I pay attention for not to make so much contrast. I'm trying to get a lighter color on the wavy areas on the pole of the orange, so the waves will seem more pronounced. Now I'm covering the object with the same texture, and let's see the result. Now let's tweak the colors. Let's make it more red, and I will make smaller the previously erased parts. And yes, the result seems more better now. Yes, a little. I'm playing with noise. In the stage, I will use both half orange and full orange. To create a half orange from the full orange, I will make a clone of the full orange and slice it into two pieces. And I will put same displacement map on the other half. Now let's make the inside of half orange. So choose the edges on the periphery, extrude them through the inside. Yes, but orange cannot have this kind of sharp corners. It is not looking real. I'm chamfering these edges and they will look more natural now. I'm doing the same thing for the other part. So upper and lower part of the orange will be different, but they were modeled with the same technique, of course. I detached inner surface and I will create a texture for that surface. There are small mistakes and I correct them. Yes, so I finished the modeling stage of the orange now. Let's cover the texture of the inner surface. Actually, this texture was a photograph of a real orange. To fix the small mistakes about mapping, I used the unwrap modifier. And our texture and object can work together now. Now we have two pieces of orange which are harmonious with each other. I can use a bump mapping In this inside surface, I prefer to use bump mapping, not displacement. To create a translucent effect, I clone the same surface inside a few times. I will use the same material with different opacity values on these objects. This is a little cheat, but if you are not too close to object, you can use this cheat for translucency. Let's start modeling the melon. Melon is another polar object, so I can start with a sphere, but it has a small part on the pole here. First let's create the sphere, move vertices to create this small part. Yes, many countries has many different types of melon, but in my country, Turkey, this is a very usual type of melon. We have some other more spherical and lighter colored melons, but this is more elliptical, so I can place the bottle inside. This looks reasonable for me, so I prefer this melon. Indeed, this is not a symmetrical object. Now I will create the bumpy look on the surface of the melon. I will use the noise material of 3ds Max, but I will give unproportional values for length and width scale factors, so the texture will look stretched. Now I will work on this texture in Photoshop. I will crop the unnecessary parts. And I will darken the top and bottom ends. Let's make some Gaussian blur. I will tweak the brightness and contrast values, and white and black areas are more visible now. As in the orange model, I'm using a displacement modifier, and as you see, we have a bumpy surface on the melon now, but actually it looks too much dense, so I will decrease the number of bumps now. And I will make the darker areas larger. Yes, it looks better now. Let's make the final changes. Save it. Yes, I finished the model. I'm making a copy of the model and save it. If I make mistake in future, and if I need to start again, I will start with the model which I kept. And now I will start modeling the inside surface part, and I will use a similar method which I used for orange, and merge the bottle object into the scene. Move the bottle in the place, but we don't have the surface of the melon yet, so I will model it now. I'm selecting the edges on the model, then I'm extruding the edges through the inside, and I'm moving the vertices manually. Actually, anybody can use different techniques while modeling these objects. I'm just using a very simple method. Let's mirror these, and yes. Attach the different objects. I will chamfer those corners. Let's select these edges and chamfer. So now when I use Turbo Smooth modifier, last corrections. Actually, this result satisfies enough. As I did before for the orange objects, I will do the same here for the melon. The edges between the inner and outer surface are too sharp, and I will select them and chamfer them. This will give a better look. This time I will use the texture that I prepared for another project a few years before. This texture looks like the inside of the melon, so I can use it. I will select the inner surface of the object and assign the material on that surface. Move the vertices into proper places. And yes, inside of the melon is also finished now. And let's create the outer texture. This texture is also originally created for another project, like the previous one. And now I will make some changes on it to use it in our project. I want more green areas in the lower part of the melon, and other parts can have more yellow areas and some small green dots, but in the lower part I will have large green areas. Well, these large green spots in the middle part are not looking good. Let's correct the small defects in mapping. And yes, finally we covered the interior and exterior textures of the melon, and the model is finished. Now I can clone this model to create the opposite part, and yes, finally melon is also finished now.